Hello and welcome to the Responsive Family Sleep Podcast. I'm your host, Kim Hawley, holistic sleep coach, lactation consultant, peaceful parenting educator, and mom. If you've ever felt overwhelmed by all the conflicting sleep info, frustrated with sleep information that just plain felt wrong, or searched desperately for a truly gentle and responsive sleep approach, then you are in the right place. In each episode, we'll be answering your most pressing baby and toddler sleep questions, busting those sleep myths, and helping you understand truly developmental, biologically normal baby and toddler sleep, plus encouraging you to trust your intuition along the way. Let's get started. Hello and welcome back to the podcast. I wanted to tackle a question, situation, struggle that I hear from a lot of parents, and that is this idea that do I need to stop nursing to sleep so that others can support sleep, right? And I hear this a lot from very nursing-focused babies, or from the parents of very nursing-focused babies, or from situations where there's a lot of parent preference, or from partners who feel kind of useless, right? Now, I'm not saying they are useless, but I often hear from them that they feel useless when they are not able to support sleep. And I want to take a bit of a dive into this topic because people think that it's because the baby is nursing to sleep. Sometimes people even think it's because the baby is nursing at all, right? But it's not. And nursing becomes the thing that we blame. And that's not necessarily an individual family's fault, right? Because it is how society sees nursing, right? We tell everyone to nurse, 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 breastfeed, 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 feed your baby from your body until we don't. Until we start criticizing it, right? Until you're doing it in public, until you're nursing to sleep, until your baby likes to nurse back to sleep, until they're telling you to night wean, until they're telling you, why do you need to still be nursing? And so on and so forth, right? So we aren't actually a very breastfeeding supportive society, particularly when it comes to sleep. So I want to just say this very clearly. It is not nursing fault that other people cannot put your baby to sleep. It's not. And you don't need to stop nursing to work on other people being able to put your baby to sleep. So, how does this start? Well, the person who's pregnant, that baby lived inside them for 9 months. And so there's already a bit of a parent preference at birth, right? And this is normal. This is healthy, right? And if that parent is also nursing, they probably also have longer parental leave. And let's just be real, this does not necessarily apply to same-sex couples, right? I'm sorry here, this is very heterosexual, but women tend to do more child rearing and direct baby care. And some of that is because they're nursing, right? So it's built in. Some of that is because they tend to have longer parental leaves. And some of that is just sexism, right? Like in gender roles, traditional gender roles. And some of it is because a lot of partners don't have that modeling of what does it look like when you are not the nursing parent, your partner is nursing, and baby does have that preference. How do you make that space for yourself so that you can do these things, right? So inherently, we often have a family where one parent is spending a lot more time caring for baby. So of course, there's a preference by that baby for that parent at a very vulnerable time, which is falling asleep. So that's one layer. We'll talk about how maybe to counterbalance that a little bit. But the other thing is that nursing is regulating, right? Breastfeeding is regulating. Sucking is regulating. That's why lots of babies like pacifiers, right? Who don't feed to sleep. And it's regulating with a bottle too. So sucking, feeding to sleep is regulating. And so nursing is baby's best comfort tool for a lot of nursing babies. Not all, right? Of course, not all, but for a lot, that is their best way to connect, way to deal with stress, way to deal with overstimulation, way to relax. And so, of course, at a time when their body needs to relax, needs to downregulate, nursing is a really powerful tool. And so what often happens is that we fall into the pattern that nursing works really well. So we almost always nurse to sleep. And that parent has a lot more hands-on care time. So they're also a little bit more attuned to baby, and baby maybe responds a little bit better. And then we layer the nursing on top of that. And we get in a place where it feels really hard to do something different or differently, and where it feels really hard for another caregiver to do sleep. And that's really, really understandable. So I say we get into this situation, absolutely no judgment, right? Like it is natural given the environment that we are in that happens, because we often don't have a few people regularly around us to share that load right from the beginning. Whether that's our partner or an auntie or baby's grandma, we don't have that built in, pass the baby around to trusted people, built in the same way it has been in the past and perhaps is in other places. So we get this like built reality that nursing is the best tool and that it's hard to do other things and that there is a parent preference around sleep. And then you don't know what to do with that. And so we blame nursing, we blame breastfeeding when we just often are lacking the tools for how to set up that other parent or other caregivers for success. So it's not nursing's fault, but I understand why people struggle with seeing that, right, with kind of blaming nursing. But we're also just, like I said, taught to blame nursing for everything that's bad. So what do we need to do, right? The first thing is we need to remember that sleep is a really vulnerable time. And so who is soothing that baby at other times? How often is it the other parent? Right? Because a lot of times what will happen is like both parents love to play with baby and they're involved, and maybe, baby gets fussy and there's a little bit of an effort to soothe, but very quickly baby gets handed off to nurse. And again, that is normal. That is healthy. I am not telling you to stop that. But what often doesn't happen is that the parent who is not nursing, right? Dad, other mom, other dad, like, whatever family structure we have here, like their parent has less one-on-one time and has less soothing time. There's usually an imbalance here. And so if we want a baby to be able to fall asleep with both parents, we need to make sure that when that baby is awake, it's getting lots of one-on-one time with both parents, that we're evening out that unevenness a bit, right? Another thing we need to do is make sure that babies know that both parents are part of going to sleep, right? Because if it's not happening in baby's reality, they do not know that this is a safe and reasonable thing. They don't know, hey, Dad, you're a totally competent adult who can absolutely soothe me to sleep. They're like, you're not here at bedtime. Where's mommy? Oh my gosh, what's going on, right? And they just don't know it's part of their reality unless we make it part of their reality. So we need to make sure that both parents have one-on-one time with baby and long enough that they are doing soothing, right? I would never ask you to withhold nursing from a baby to regulate if that nursing parent is there. And we can also still create space for it not to always be that, right? We can make sure both parents are involved in the bedtime routine. Now, if you have older children, sometimes this is not as feasible, right? And that's okay. But making sure that both parents are part of the bedtime routine, that baby experiences both parents as part of helping them settle for sleep, that can be really, really helpful. And then our third big thing is making sure that baby associates more things with falling asleep than just nursing. And so that could look like a couple different things, right? It could look like As we nurse to sleep at bedtime, we rock and we hum, or we rock and we play sleepy music, or we stroke their face or pat their butt or rub their back because they find that relaxing. And so we're giving a few sensory inputs with nursing, right? And if you start to do that consistently, then baby's going to be like, oh, we also hum and rock to sleep. We don't just nurse to sleep, right? And those aren't necessarily what you need to do. The idea here is we're hitting a few different senses. It should feel like a good addition. It should feel like it's relaxing. Not that we necessarily expect it to work on its own right away. So that's one way. We get more sensory tools into the falling asleep process alongside nursing. Another way is to just mix it up a bit, right? Does baby like stroller naps? Can we do that? Does baby like baby wearing naps? Can we do that? Like, can we mix up a few different ways of falling asleep? Maybe not at bedtime, but at nap time, right? And so that could be a great thing for a different caregiver to do. Can they do a stroller nap? Can they do a baby wearing nap? Can they do a dance to sleep kind of contact nap and then sit down, right? Can they bring in some flexibility? And can you bring in some flexibility as a nursing parent so baby's getting that experience? So we blame nursing, but we have a lot of tools. And often in families where they have the space to do this from early on, we get less parent preference around sleep and less nursing preference around sleep. Doesn't mean it doesn't come back, right? Because it is normal for babies to move into and out of preference on their sleep preferences and parent preferences. But often we see more flexibility there. And I say have the space to do it because space to do it means that you have enough parental leave for both parents to be around, to have lots of hands-on baby care, that you have both parents having work schedules, that even once folks are back to work, they're still around enough to have hands-on baby care time during the week. But also, you have to have a postpartum period where there's space to do that, right? So a family where everything is really hard because you had a complicated birth, because you have a complicated feeding journey, complicated postpartum, for whatever reason, then maybe the easiest thing is what you need to do, right? And that's how we can get into those patterns sometimes even with the other pieces in place, because we just needed to do what was easiest, and maybe nursing to sleep was easiest. Or we needed to get lots of nursing in, and so that's what you did. And that's okay. This is never anyone's fault. It's never about doing something wrong. It's about recognizing that we jump straight to blaming nursing when often it's more about caregiving patterns, expectations, letting baby experience different ways of falling asleep, and having one-on-one time. Right? And so just structural pieces that are sometimes outside of our control. And sometimes it's just not the right time, right? So sometimes it's like, oh, we're blaming nursing, but it's really just we're in the middle of the 4-month, sleep craziness, or 8-9 month where we have lots of separation anxiety and there's just a lot going on. And so if you're already in this pattern where there is a strong preference around nursing to sleep and specific parent around sleep, sometimes we have to pick our timing for when to work on this, because not every developmental phase is the best time to push a baby out of their comfort zone. And sometimes we need to acknowledge that, hey, this doesn't seem the time for that. Let's keep these ideas in play and wait till we seem like things have settled down a bit. And by ideas in play, I mean lots of caregiver, parent, one-on-one time and soothing and things like that are away from sleep. And then just sort of to sum things up, I also want to acknowledge that a lot of people feel like the struggle with other caregivers sort of outside of who I would think of as immediate caregiving support, right? So partner, co-parent, a grandparent, something like that, when it comes to babysitters and things like that, we just have to realize that unless this person is regularly in your baby's life, asking them to put your baby to sleep for bedtime, if you have a baby that isn't an inherently very easygoing sleeper, it's just harder, right? It is just harder. And so that is just a fact. So dates at other time, babysitters at other time, having a babysitter that is around regular enough that they become part of that inner circle, like that can be really lovely when that's possible. And so there's lots of ways to think about these things. But inherently, I have seen so many babies who nurse to sleep and nurse overnight for years, right? That nurse well into toddlerhood, who are fine with other people putting them to sleep. And I've seen babies who are not nursing to sleep or are not nursing at all, who struggle with caregiver preference, like who do not want their other parent to put them to sleep, who want one parent and not the other parent. And so I say that as we're sort of summing things up, just to remind you that it is not about nursing necessarily. Nursing is a piece of this puzzle, but it is not the underlying reason that you might struggle with other people putting your little one to sleep. So I hope this gives you just some confidence that you don't have to make big nursing changes to work on caregiver preference or nursing preference or need for around sleep, that there are other avenues to explore and other ways to go, and that it's not your fault. You did not, single-handedly create this situation by nursing to sleep. So keep nursing. That's what you want to do. It's such a wonderful tool. And it is always okay to work on more caregiver flexibility and more sleep soothing tool flexibility as well. Those two things can exist together. Thank you for joining me today. I hope this episode left you feeling more informed, confident, and encouraged on your sleep journey. And just a reminder before you go that nothing in this episode is individualized to your specific sleep situation, nor is it to be taken as medical advice. Take what resonates, ignore what doesn't, and check with your healthcare provider about any medical concerns. Take a moment to subscribe to this podcast so that you'll never miss an episode. And take a moment to rate, review, or share an episode you love on social media. All of that helps parents just like you find me, this podcast, and this gentle and responsive sleep information. I'll see you next time.